Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritual Boujee Astrology, and we're going to take a deeper look into regards to these conjunctions to Pluto that are happening this week, how that energy is starting to lead to other things that are going to start to come together, how the coming together energy is going to be something that leads to things unfolding in eclipse season, and how this upcoming eclipse season is not just about this eclipse season, but it's also going to very much tie into things that are going to happen at a much later date. Now, I know I have a lot of people listening to me for the first time. This is a meditative rant video. I don't do these very often. I only do these whenever I feel like I need to string a whole slew of dates that's going to go beyond just like a weekly date or the monthly episodes. And it usually puts a lot more focus in regards to the energy at play in one particular area of the sky. And this tends to help people, again, understand certain patterns. Because it's one thing to hear me say in an episode, like, okay, some of these things can tie back to X date. It's another thing for me to sit here and show you, okay, X date to X date to X date to X date all at once. And that's what this is more going to be about. So if you're not interested in learning more about those patterns in astrology, skip this episode. It's not going to hurt my feelings. This is more along the lines of trying to let people know when and where to expect things, how to expect things, and the things that we need to be looking for now to be prepared for what's going to come in the future. But some people have a hard time understanding some of the things that I say whenever I say this next part. There are energies this week where we need to be paying attention to the topics of the conversations, the appointments that we are having, business appointments, medical appointments. It's more than just one thing. Doesn't have to just be ours. It can also have to do with our elders. It could have to do with our children. It could have to do with other people within the family. We need to be paying attention to the incoming messages, the emails, the mailing, certified letters, things from the IRS, things from, the tax accountant. We need to be paying attention to these things because there's energies as to what's going on this week, big and small. In the weekly episode, I mentioned a lot of the big things tied to relationships, job opportunities, and things along these lines, still a part of the theme, and the environmental things we should be paying attention to. But a lot of people miss the small stuff. I don't care how big or how small, you need to be paying attention to the things that are unfolding this week, because they do have levels that are going to come back through later on. Specifically, whenever it comes to the eclipses tied to Aries. Now, one of the things that I've noticed pattern-wise over the last few years is that whenever it comes to the eclipse axis, the North Node's side of things has not been paying attention and following the normal patterns. At the end of 2021, we had an out of sign eclipse in Taurus. The nodes didn't change signs until January of 2022. And by the time we finally started to have the full axis of eclipses, we had more in the sign of Taurus than we'd had in the sign of Scorpio. Now, I have a reason why I'm saying this. The nodes, when they go through any general signs, their average time span is 18 to 20 months. The majority of the signs are 18 months. However, Leo Aquarius axis and the Cancer Capricorn axis, it's actually closer to 20 months. That part doesn't apply for right now, but I'm still letting people know the average is 18 to 20. We are going through 18-month cycles right now. We had multiple out of sign eclipses when it came to the sign of Taurus that showed me we had a prolonged pattern of things that needed to be shaped, healed, fixed, and altered. However, some area of that eclipse axis did bleed into the eclipse axis that we're in right now. And some of what I'm going to cover is going to go over the eclipse energies that has gone on over the course of the last year and what's going to happen over the rest of this year And when I'm saying year right now, I'm saying like calendar year. So from spring of 2024 to spring of 2025, just to be clear, not just the actual calendar year of 2024. In addition to that, I really want to talk about whatever has been coming through in these Plutonian conjunctions this week. Now, I'm recording this on February 15th. The last 2 days, the 13th and the 14th, was the Mars-Pluto conjunction. Sometimes I take a little bit more time to meditate on certain transits to allow for those things to come through. That is not what I did this week. I was busy. You guys, the Mars-Pluto conjunctions have not been fun, and I know that. And the people that have not had fun doing those things have been in my DMs or you've been on my lives. So I know it's been a rough energy. And we have one more Plutonian conjunction that's going to happen this week at the time that I'm recording this, and that's going to be the Venus-Pluto conjunctions. I do truly feel that these two conjunctions to Pluto are meant to show us something else. They're meant to give new energy, an area that needs to be transformed, and specifically when it comes to the Venus-Pluto conjunction, I do feel like that one is going to take months to really understand, because we will have more than one 0-degree Venus-Pluto conjunction. In the week ahead forecast, I only talked about the one for this week. We're actually going to have another one, and it's going to happen on December 7th, right as Mars is turning retrograde. There is an energy that is starting to unfold right now. In some people's lives, it is in a huge way. In other people's lives, it is the smallest little detail right now. You're agreeing to something, you're taking a job, you're super excited, you're going in for medical checks, you're getting your labs done, you're doing something small. You have no idea that it is going to result in more things that are going to come, because this small little moment does not resemble a trickle effect, because the trickling has not begun. It's going to. And I have more than one reason why I'm going to say that. The other thing that we have to look at whenever it comes to this eclipse axis, specifically now, again, on that North Node side, and I've said this before, and I'm actually going to put this now on the screen so people can actually see this. When it comes to the North Node in Aries, the upcoming eclipse that we are going to have in April of this year is the most important one. We had an out of sign eclipse in the sign of Aries on April 19th of 2023. The thing about out of sign eclipses is that when it's before the nodes change signs, it's instigating the hornet's nest. You know where it's at? It's like you're picking up the rocks. You know you're about to hit a hornet's nest. Sometimes it's a good hornet's nest, sometimes it's a bad one. This is my analogy for the time being. Deal with my country stuff. My country girl ways. We're picking up the rocks, we're picking up the ammo, we're picking up what we're going to use to hit that hornet's nest, because we want it to hit the ground for whatever reason. You know, sometimes we like to do things that are stupid. That's a big portion of the energy. Basically, the energy since last April has been gathering the supplies. Getting the bigger rock, getting the bigger stick, getting whatever we need to do. And as we move forward from this week all the way through the rest of February and going into March, it's walking back over to that hornet's nest with all of whatever we've got in our hands, ready to start hitting that thing, because we need something to drop. And there's a reason I'm comparing this upcoming eclipse season to a hornet's nest. And it has to do with the pattern that goes through the last new moon, this new moon eclipse, and next year's new moon eclipse, because all of the Aries eclipses are new moons, and that's not normal. We should have new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon, but we're not. When it comes to this particular eclipse axis, where we should have 3 full moons and 3 new moons, we don't. We have 1 full moon eclipse in this eclipse axis. One in Libra. And it's the one that's going to happen here pretty soon at the end of March. 1 full moon, 1 level of completion, and the rest are new moon energies. There's a lot of energies that are meant to instigate in this axis. Full moons usually are completions. They're letting things go. They're leveling things up. They are wiping things off the plate. We only have 1 in an entire 18-month axis. We should have 3. Everything else that we're going to be having are new moons. We will have a full moon eclipse this fall, I want to be clear, but it will not be in the sign of Aries. It will be an out of sign eclipse. We did have a full moon eclipse last fall, but again, it was an out of sign eclipse. So last fall, that out of sign eclipse was culminating an ending of energy tied to the prior eclipse cycle. This fall, the out of sign eclipse that we will have in the sign of Pisces will be instigating the next eclipse axis. This 18-month cycle is meant to have strong new beginnings. I have said for a very, very long time, we have been in an energy tied to purge and release and overcoming and letting go the things that are no longer meant for us. I have said that for a reason. Because the energies that are going to follow are going to bring in new areas of balance, new areas of relief, new areas of change, new areas of challenge, new areas of success. There is new that is coming. And much of the energy that's meant to prepare us to what's going to come next really starts to come together over the course of the rest of February. Part of it has to do with these Plutonian conjunctions. Part of it has to do with the fact that right after Mars and Venus make these conjunctions to Pluto, that they will spend the rest of this month in a conjunction themselves, in an area of the sky where they've already had a conjunction once before. So I'm going to show you a couple of things, just to be clear. And I will go back and forth. This is just a different type of episode, so you guys got to be patient with me on this, okay? I'm going to do this. Da-da-da. Okay. I have this February 16th at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. There's no specific angle about the time. It's more along the lines of like, this is right after Venus is going into Aquarius. Venus will make her conjunction in the overnight hours from the 16th into the 17th. That's when the exact Plutonian conjunction hits. But Venus will already be starting its 3-degree conjunction to Mars. That actually starts in the overnight hours tonight, February 15th, into tomorrow, the 16th. So this energy is culminating right now. Venus is the goddess of love. It is the planet that brings us pleasure and the ways that we consume that pleasure. So whenever I say pleasure, for some people, they think sex. That's true. But there are other ways that we gain pleasure. Music, poetry, food. Venus is very much these things, are ways that we consume these things that bring us pleasure. Your sexual organs, yes, but also your taste buds, your mouth, your throat. If it comes to like perfumes and smells, even food has a wonderful smell. You cannot tell me that people don't really follow the smell of fresh baked bread. I know they do. Little cartoons like to the window. Look at that baked apple pie. Oh, yes. You smell some good food, some good barbecue. Oh, great. Those are all Venusian things. Venus will make a conjunction to Pluto, an area of personal power and personal strength and transformation. But for others, it's the abuse of power and how we are powerless. There is trauma, there is fear. And I want to be clear, both energies can be instigated this week. Transformation, personal power and personal strength, as well as overcoming fear and trauma and abuse. Having those things spoken and pronounced and brought to light this week. The things that are coming to light this week, this middle week of February, allows for a lot of things that are going to start coming together. Now, please note how I'm saying that. I've got this on the 16th. Venus and Mars are right here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to fast forward each day, and I want you to pay attention to Venus and Mars. Move this forward, the 17th, 18th, 19th. They're staying right in the same area, right there together. They're getting closer and closer. They'll start to get on top of each other on the 20th. I think it's the 22nd is whenever they go the most exact. There it is. Venus will go exact to Mars and then surpass. And then throughout the rest of the month, they're going to stay together. Venus will start to move forward. And what we're going to see is a shift in their dynamic in one way. And that is, up until this point, Mars has disrupted something first, and then Venus has come through with the solution. Venus has come through with the resolution. Venus has come through with the result, the healing, the idea. As these two start to come together, one, there's going to be a lot of people that their sexual energies and their desire, it's going to spike through the roof. It just is. But there's going to be other things tied to Venus and Mars that are also going to come together. Now, again, these two made a conjunction between the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius back in 2022. They're actually retracing an area of the sky where they've already had a set of conjunctions. But before, something got in the way. And astrologically, the things that were coming together at the time were broken up by Saturn. Saturn's not in the way this time. Saturn is not coming through. We're not having some level of authority or resistance coming through to this energy that's meant to come together. The difference is the dynamic of Venus and Mars. In 2022, the North Node was in Venus's sign and the South Node was in Mars's sign. Now in 2024, that dynamic has flipped. The North Node, Rahu, the head of the dragon, is in Mars's sign. I will consume, I will have, I desire, I will possess, I will control, I will obtain. This is what I want. Gimme, 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 I'm a greedy baby. That's how I feel about Rahu. Is in Mars's sign. The god of war desires something. There are things being forged. There are things that are being built. We desire to build something up. We are desiring to have some level of pivotal disruption in our lives or in the lives of someone else. Sometimes we desire the chaos. That's called vengeance and revenge. And we have desires to get revenge. you will see these types of things to get even. And I say this particularly because right now we have the South Node, the body of the dragon, Ketu, in Venus's sign. The things that give us pleasure, the things that we desire in a love aspect, the things that we hope for, they are being cut out, cut off, and they are meant to diminish. Her power is not as strong as what it was in 2022. And we couldn't grow as fast as we wanted to in 2022 because, again, Saturn got in the way. Now we don't have that same type of energy. Saturn is an immutable sign, and Saturn will play a part in what's going to happen in eclipse season. And I'm going to show you that here in just a minute because I have a whole different screen with all the eclipses ready to be pulled up. And in many ways, it is time for this new energy to come through. What we're going to find over the course of the rest of the month is certain energies coming together. And the thing about the South Node, as much as it has to do with purge and it has to do with letting things go and releasing the things that are no longer meant for us, think minimalist when it comes to the South Node. We minimalize. In some ways, that can have to do with emotions and feelings, minimalizing how someone else could feel or what they think. And that's not a good thing. I want to be clear about that. And it can be a pattern of what we deal with over the course of the next few weeks. The other side of that coin, though, is minimalist. And that is we get rid of all of the excess and bring everything down to the bare minimum, the bare bones, to feel joy, to feel happiness, to feel peace. The South Node is in Libra, the sign of balance. We have to get rid of the excess to be in balance. And we will see this type of theme also playing out over the course of the rest of this month with that Venus-Mars conjunction. There are things that are starting to come together for the long term throughout the rest of February that is meant to be a part of the transitional energy of where we're going to have the new come through. That new is meant to come through in the upcoming eclipse season. So I'm going to show you now the eclipses. And this chart side is going to look a little different. So what you're going to see here goes Aries new moon, Aries new moon, Aries new moon, Libra full moon, Libra new moon, Libra new moon. And I did go ahead and throw on the next full moon eclipse. It's going to be the out of sign eclipse in Pisces. I'm not going to harp on this a whole lot. I really just wanted to show the pattern. So some of the patterns. One, in each Aries new moon that we are about to go through, one we've been through, the next two we're going to go through, they include Mercury retrogrades. They do. I don't know how many of you guys remember late April going into May of last year, but it was a freaking mess, guys. There were so many things getting shaken up and so much stuff coming to light and so many people just showing their ass. And it really gave us kind of a pre-warm-up energy to what kind of came through in the Venus retrograde in a weird way. Very weird way, but it did. April 19th of 2023, we had an out of sign eclipse in Aries. 2 days later, April 21st, the Mercury retrograde started. Eclipse season and a Mercury retrograde moved hand in hand. This year, we will have the full moon eclipse in the sign of Libra, which starts eclipse season on March 25th. We will have the new moon eclipse in Aries on April 8th. in between these two eclipses on April 1st, okay? April Fool's Day. I'm going to keep reminding everybody of this because somebody's still going to have the nerve to be surprised later. The universe got jokes this year. April Fool's Day starts the next Mercury retrograde. The joke's on us, guys. The joke is on us. And I will do a separate meditative rant video on that Mercury retrograde. I will not be doing a whole lot of that in this episode, but I am making everybody aware universe got jokes and the joke is on us. Okay. And in the third Aries new moon eclipse, which will be an out of sign eclipse that's going to happen March 29th of 2025, there will also be a Mercury retrograde. Not only will we have a Mercury retrograde, but we will also have another Venus retrograde. Yeah, there's a lot of things tied to these Aries new moon eclipses, these Mars ruled eclipses. The areas of disruption that must be shaken up will have a lot of restructuring, revising, recanting, reevaluating, rebuilding type energies. However, if we do not have the right things in the moment, or we are not using this energy to our advantage, what we will result in is going to be explosive, frustrated, combative, violent, not so fun, leave the bad at home energy. There's going to be a hot mess when it comes to April, guys. Super hot mess. We're going to feel the tensions that last little bit of March when we start eclipse season. But when we get to April, it's a whole other ballgame. And it's a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the eclipses in order. I'm not going to go to the Taurus out of sign eclipse. We're through that. We're done with that. I'm not worried about that. Depending on how this goes, I might be showing that Pisces eclipse. I've prepared either way, but I feel like it's going to have a whole different type of energy. Something was meant to trigger us to make physical transformations this week. Part of that had to do with the Mars-Pluto conjunction. The other part of that has to do with the Venus-Pluto conjunction. And again, we are not through this energy at the time that I'm recording this. We're midway. And for a lot of people, what's going to start to come together is going to be what we need to release and how we are releasing it and the actions we are taking to release this energy. So I want to show you this part of the pattern. Aries, new moon eclipse. If you notice, it says OOS at the end, out of sign. OOS, out of sign. Okay. Aries, new moon eclipse. Here was the new moon eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries. This was right as Mercury was stationing for its retrograde. There is another part of this Mercury at 15 degrees that I'm going to bring up into this upcoming eclipse. And it's not going to have to do with Mercury here at 15, but it is this 15 degrees of Taurus. So I'll show you that here in just a second. But there are elements of the out of sign eclipse that were activating where we needed to make changes. And for a lot of people, those changes were very, very emotional. Why do I say that? Because Mars was in Cancer. Put a pin in that. We're going to talk more about Mars and Cancer at the end. Okay. Then we had the Libra new moon eclipse in 2023, right here at 21 degrees. A lot of the energy that was tied to this eclipse was actually things that happened right before this eclipse perfected, because a lot of the other transits that happened that week, there were harder transits all throughout that week that led into this new moon. And a lot of this new moon had to do with purging and overcoming fear and overcoming a lot of trauma. And what's interesting about this new moon eclipse in another way is that Mars and Pluto were busy. Right before this eclipse perfected, we actually had a Mars-Pluto square. And the Mars-Pluto square happened right as Pluto was turning direct. This was a very interesting week, guys. I don't know how many of you remember this. October, it was like basically October 9th through the 14th. It was a very dynamic week of shifts and turns. A lot of that was just the start of some of the turns, and it was a real inkling of, again, letting us know areas that needed to be purged. And a lot of those areas that were tied to the purging had directly to do with Venus and her retrograde, just to be clear. Okay. Our next eclipse, the start of eclipse season, is going to be the one and only full moon eclipse that we're going to have in this eclipse axis. Here's the funny thing. Remember what I said about that 2023 eclipse and the 15 degrees of Taurus? Okay. I've said this in quite a few episodes, but not any of the recent ones. So to fully understand part of what I'm about to say, this is going to go back to a lot of what I was referring to back in last summer and last fall, and even parts of last winter, specifically tied to Jupiter and Mercury. The Mercury retrograde of April, May of 2023 was between 15 and 5 degrees of Taurus. The Jupiter retrograde that happened in Taurus was between 15 and 5 degrees. There were elements of things that were brought to light, logically brought to light, information that was brought to light, situations and opportunities that came through right after that Mercury retrograde that directly played out in Jupiter in Taurus energy. Right as we're getting into eclipse season, we have two elements tied to this Venus eclipse that we need to pay attention to. One, this is when Jupiter is leaving shadow, and Jupiter's point of shadow is also Mercury's point of shadow from 2023. What got shook up in that 2023 eclipse time frame, because it's coming back around in this upcoming eclipse. We had an out of sign eclipse in Aries. We had out of sign things that we were not prepared for because the nodes hadn't changed signs, instigating where we needed to be having change, instigating where things weren't correct. And we needed to make some very logical, informational type changes with a certain amount of hope in line. But again, a lot of things we thought we were going to get accomplished, that we were trying to manifest, not everything that we tried to manifest last summer could be manifested. If there's ever been an eclipse energy that we are trying to manifest something, this upcoming eclipse axis is huge for manifestation. There are a couple reasons why I'm saying that. I'm tying a lot of prior episodes information into this one. We got a couple different things here. One, Jupiter will be leaving shadow. This leaving shadow energy actually does tie back to the prior Mercury retrograde as well as the Venus retrograde, because Venus made multiple squares to Jupiter, specifically at 15 degrees. And this, again, is where Jupiter is leaving shadow. Two, good old two. We have Venus, the ruler of this eclipse. She will be making a conjunction to Saturn, good old daddy Saturn, right as we go into eclipse season. Now, another thing that I want to bring up, and why I know this is going to have more layers to it that's going to go all the way into 2025, is this is also when Saturn enters shadow. What does that mean? What do I keep bringing all the shadows in, and so many people are very unaware of what this fully means. When a planet enters shadow, this is a point that he will be coming back to in the sky. He or she, Venus, sometimes it's her. We will go forward so much, station, turn retrograde. We're going to come back to certain points of the sky. What that means is that the dynamics of what is starting to occur right as this planet is entering shadow is not set in stone. It is one element that we will be coming back to later on, because not everything that we're trying to initiate, not every opportunity that is coming through, not every conversation that is being had, not every topic in the room is correct, is set in stone. Some element is not prepared. We will be launching very big things in this upcoming eclipse season. We are meant to. Things that we were preparing energetically have been getting prepared since last spring. But it will not be the full element for an entire year. And not everybody is going to be prepared for that. Not everybody is going to understand that. It's so easy to think, I thought everything was going to be great. It was good for a minute. It was good for a moment. I felt so successful right here. What the hell happened? Some people will get their egos in the way and they're going to overstep the energy. And then the universe will find ways to come back and humble them. If you understand these energies and you work with these energies, the humbling lessons do not have to be so harsh. And that's a hard thing for people to learn. But I am saying from Jump Street, only some of what we are starting in this upcoming eclipse season is going to stick. By the time we get to the later parts of 2024, they will start to get tested. They will go through disruptions. They will go through some hell. Not sugarcoating a thing. I'm making everybody very, very aware of that. And it's going to come through in the Mars retrograde. Okay? Okay. Okay. This is the, again, March 25th, Libra eclipse. Venus just made a conjunction to Saturn. This is going to be important for a whole other reason. Why? Because if I go to the Aries new moon eclipse that's going to happen, so this is April 8th, 2024. I've got this at 1:58 p.m. For those that are living here in the central area of the States, like this is going to be the great eclipse that so many people are going to be going outside to watch. The ruler of this eclipse, of course, is going to be Mars. And ironically enough, Mars is making a conjunction to Saturn. Look at that. Both rulers of the eclipse axis that we will be going through will be making conjunctions to Saturn right as we go into the eclipses. Time, rules, boundary, karma, elders, authority. Some of us will be taking new levels of authority. We will be leveling up. Some of us will be addressing things because it is time to address them. It is time for areas to change. Now, what's interesting whenever it comes to Mars and Saturn is traditionally, Mars and Saturn will make two conjunctions to each other in a given sign, given how long Saturn goes through a sign. And Saturn will be in Pisces collectively for 3 years. It started in March of 2023. It will not end until February 14th of 2026. Oh, Valentine's Day. What a joke. When it comes to the stars in the universe right now, I'll say it that way. Traditionally, we would have two conjunctions of Mars and Saturn. We had two in Aquarius. We had two in Capricorn. We will not have two in Pisces. This is the one and only. And it coincides with the one and only new moon eclipse while the North Node is in Mars's sign, is in Aries. It is time for these new energies. It is time for these restructuring, for this level up, for this popping off type energy, because there will be a lot of popping off in good ways and bad ways. Mercury is going to be retrograde, good ways and bad ways. There will be misinformation that creates a lot of popping off. Just to be clear, that's not going to be fun. That's going to be infuriating. And many of us are going to go into this eclipse season very, very infuriated with people in positions of power. And there can be a level of that energy that is being expressed and known this week in February, the week that I'm recording this, the week that this is going to get uploaded, that is going to directly impact the upcoming eclipse season. Because sometimes people in positions of power do not like to be held accountable for their own actions. Have you ever heard the saying, do as I say and not as I do? Yeah, that type of energy. Somebody can be saying something along these lines to you this week. Do as I say and not as I do. That once things progress a little bit more, we're going to realize, no, no, no. If you can't be a person that sets the example as to which you wish people to follow, then you shouldn't be in the position that you are in. That type of energy and that type of mindset will also play into the things that will happen later in 2024 as we get closer to that Mars retrograde. There are energies that are meant to start, meant to initiate, meant to happen as we go through the rest of February into March and into April. Things that we wanted to start last year, but we couldn't. Because again, the space was not correct. The place was not correct. The people were not correct. The idea was not correct. The information, the connections, something was out of alignment. There is a reason we had to go through areas of purge. There are reasons that we had to go through certain lessons over the last year, from the April eclipse season to the upcoming eclipse season, to prepare us and test us to make sure we have learned certain lessons. Much of what we're starting to put together this week, going through the rest of February, is to prepare us for this upcoming eclipse season. And again, not everything that we're going to start in eclipse season is going to stick. It will be tested. There will be trials, there will be tribulation, there will be frustration, there will be hell to pay, karmically speaking, when it comes to the later parts of 2024. So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that next new moon eclipse that's going to happen in Libra. Because what do we have going on again now? Mars is back in Cancer. This is important. This is important because the way we started the eclipse axis of Aries and Libra, Mars was in Cancer. The way we will end it, Mars will be in Cancer. I really want people to think back, go back to your photos, go back to your social media, go back to what you were doing in April and May of 2023. Because some of the areas that were getting tested, that were being connected, they were not meant to stick for a reason. They were being tested for a reason. And the first go round of energy was not to break so much when it comes to the Mars transits, but it was to disrupt. I'm going to compare it now to whenever you're going to go plant certain things in the soil. You don't just dig in one area, the whole, it's better to actually mix all of the soil to refresh those nutrients and get different levels of mycelium growing inside before we plant. It's not always good to just throw new soil on top of old soil, because we should mix and get those nutrients working together, get the rooting system working together. It's healthy. Some people will not start something new until the new is available, and they try to start the something new on top of the something old. And again, excess. Where there has been excess, we should not have that anymore. The idea is to minimalize. The idea is to change. Now, a lot of times when it comes to Mars retrogrades, and we will be having a Mars retrograde from December. I missed the one in front of the two on my notes. December 6th to February 24th. December 6th of 2024 to February 24th of 2025. We're not having great Valentine's days, guys. Do you notice that? Okay. In between these Mars-ruled eclipses, and I'm saying this in the sense of the Aries new moons. Right before that out of sign eclipse, we had just wrapped up a Mars retrograde. It was in Gemini. That's how we started 2023, was in a Mars retrograde. The next retrograde that we'll have with Mars is going to be how we end this year. And it is going to occur in between the two new moon eclipses, the next two new moon eclipses that we're going to have in Aries. There's a reason I'm saying the things that are going to start this year are not necessarily going to stick all the way through. They will be tested, they will be disrupted. So my biggest, I almost said example. My biggest suggestion, my biggest advice is, let's not bite off more than we can chew all in one eclipse season, guys. Let's not. And let's also not get complacent and let things fall to the wayside. And that will be easy to do as we start to get into summertime, because things are going to start to feel so good, like everything's going to go right. And again, complacency can pick up. This is not a good idea, because of how those energies will be tested later. Now, the other reason I'm so locked into these Venus-Pluto conjunctions, and it's not just the conjunction, but it is Venus, Mars, and Pluto, has to do with the fact that we will have multiple oppositions between Mars and Pluto during that Mars retrograde. Most planets, when they have a conjunction to one another, they start cycles between one another. Acts and actions of change and transformation, of overcoming trauma, and having to do with the abuses of power. I'm going to fast forward this screen now to July 1st. Because this is whenever Venus is going to hit her opposition to Pluto. Now, again, Venus-Pluto opposition, we are going to have their conjunction this week, literally over the next 2 days. This Venus-Pluto opposition can directly tie to whatever is happening in this Venus-Pluto conjunction that's happening on February 16th and 17th. Pay note, pay attention, journal your shit. There will be some very shocking energy that follows, just to be absolutely clear in this timeline. And given the Venus-Pluto opposition includes the moon in Libra, making a conjunction to that south node, the things that can come through this week can be things that directly are going to impact the body. But even if in the moment of this week, you don't realize the full impact of the body, it will be coming back around over the summertime, because the south node is the body without a head. Now, the longer we go through the south node energy in Libra, the longer it goes, the more we get to an area of minimalist can be peaceful because we don't have excess. Just to be clear, the longer this energy can happen, the more peace can start to come through. So it doesn't all have to be heavy. But again, whatever is coming through this week, the week that I'm recording this middle week of February, can tie into the things that are going to come through in July. Right there. Okay? Okay. The next date that comes into is going to be November. So bump this just a few months. Back this up by a week. Here is Pluto, 29 degrees, 45 minutes. This is going to be the time frame where Pluto is back in Capricorn, because Pluto will go back into Capricorn from September to November. It's just about 2.5 months. We will have things that trigger us back to old energies that need to close out. And an element of that does have to include Mars. Now, I'm going to bump this a month. We're going to specifically get to first the 6th, and then we're going to go to the 7th. Why? Because December 6th is when Mars is going to turn retrograde. At this point on the screen, it's not retrograde. Over the next 24 hours, though, Mars will turn retrograde, and that will include the second Venus-Pluto conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius. The one that we will have this week is at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Elements of this week will get tested. Be aware of these energies. They will have other things come back up. And if you are not completely in alignment, if the energy is not where it needs to be, if you're doing something that is against another person, that is an act of vengeance or revenge or and a focus of hurting someone else, whether you mean to or not, elements of that will come back around. Themes can come back around. You can have a major heartbreak this week, breaking someone's heart. I'm going to say it that way. And then you go into a new relationship and you think everything's fine, fun, and dandy. But then you're going to get to the end of this year, and whatever level of betrayal that you did to hurt someone else can then be done to you. Call it an Uno reverse. But this is what I mean by look for the themes. You can have other opportunities that, again, can have a major impact to the body that get disrupted. Be aware of what Aquarius rules in your chart, because this is where we're going to feel a lot of that change and disruption. Okay. Mars will start its retrograde in Leo. It will actually go back into Cancer and make its next opposition to Pluto. Oh, I went too far. Right before it goes back in there. The exact opposition of Pluto is going to be January 2nd through 3rd. So I'm right past this exact. Here's Pluto, 1 degrees. Here's Mars. We're going to have the second Mars-Pluto opposition. Altogether, we're going to have 3 of them. The third and final one will happen after the next eclipse season. So let's talk about that. The new moon eclipse, out of sign eclipse of 2025, is right here at 8 degrees of Aries. And again, Mars is in Cancer. This will be before the third and final Mars Pluto opposition, but this is also going to include a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde. To make things stick, to make things adhere, to get certain things tied to our emotions, our belief systems that need to be expressed, that need to be known. We will be cementing ideas this spring that will get tested this winter. And the final product, so to speak, will actually come through next spring. The final round of healing, the final round of understanding the pain, of understanding the trauma, of understanding past events will come through later. Only so much of what's coming together right now will adhere. And again, we do not want to bite off more than we can chew. We do not want to let certain things overtake us. We want to be able to understand the energy as it is unfolding, because the layers to what's unfolding will take a very long time to progress and understand. I'm going to bump this a few months till we get to April. By April, we will be out of eclipse season, and this will be our third and final Mars opposition to Pluto. And this also includes a Venus-Saturn conjunction, which is going to be very, very interesting. And it's also the start of Neptune going into Aries. I have a lot of feelings about Neptune and Aries that I don't want to get into, but I feel like we're going to be seeing the production of a whole new type of reality. And I'm saying that in the sense of like, think augmented reality, think new rounds of technology, that there's going to be something that is very much starting to be generated. And again, I feel like we're on the verge of our next, I'm going to compare it to the Industrial Revolution. It's not necessarily industrial, but it's technological. I can't talk now. I've been talking too much. And that is a big portion of that energy there. A lot of what we're trying to create, people get really stuck in the mindset that everything is just going to go terrific from here. It's just going to keep going, getting better from here. And we all seem to forget the trial and error basis for whatever reason. And as soon as things go bad, all of a sudden the mindset is, oh my God, it's just going to be bad forever. And we get very, very pessimistic and negative. And that's not true either. We're only meant to grow and achieve so much in a certain period of time. And again, if we overstep, if we don't live with this energy, if we try to bite off more than we can chew, we choke a little bit. There are ways that the universe comes back and humbles us and makes us learn a different lesson. And if you have natal placements in these areas of Aquarius, in these areas of Aries, of Pisces, or Leo, you're going to feel these dates and this timeline and this energy far stronger than other people, because these areas of the sky are being highlighted by the transits and activating your natal planets in a whole different area. If you are in early degrees Leo rising, there will be huge hits to your identity and your faith, your health, and the way that you trust and connect to other people. If you are an Aquarius rising, you are starting to understand a whole different level of fear, of trauma. Things that have been going on behind the scenes will become far more known and expressed and impact your identity. And you will be either someone that can show a whole new level of personal strength and how to overcome trauma, or you will experience it and you will feel the weight of Pluto inside. Because Pluto, again, is the god of the underworld. So it's going to be more things that go on behind the scenes and impact you deep within. You have Pisces placements. Your belief system is about to be reshaped and tested. Your faith, your desires, your wish to heal and heal others. It's shifting, it's shaping, and it's changing. Aries placements are going to have a whole new level of inspiration, especially once Neptune goes into Aries. And it is a whole lot of Neptune's energy that tells me that there is going to be our next boom, but we are also going to have a whole new energy of people acting on their beliefs. And if you don't believe that, you should look at history. Because the last time Neptune was in Aries, we had a civil war. But a lot of that civil war had to do with how we were acting upon our beliefs. There was a lot of senses of entitlement whenever it came to that time frame. And another way that you can incur the idea of Neptune and Aries is you can also look at the fact that the KKK was created with Neptune in Aries. And if they were not fueled by their belief system, I don't know what was. Be very, very aware of a lot of these energies. We are in a timeline of shifting into whole new cycles. Pluto is just the first element of this shift in the new cycle. It is the area of where we are starting to feel a new beginning that is shaping society, shaping people, and shaping the masses. Some of that's going to have to be based off of technology and what technology is going to do for us. But in other ways, we're going to see people that are abusing power in whole new ways and holding them accountable. And there are elements of this upcoming Mars retrograde that I feel speak directly to that based off of historical events that occurred once before. But now the things are in reverse compared to that time frame. So I'm going to show you one other element on this and explain why I say that. So I'm changing the screen to another set of examples, not the eclipses, but now we have these right here. And now I'm going to give a little history lesson to what happened at the start of World War II. Now I want to be clear. I am not trying to forecast the start of another war. That sounds horrible. What I am showing you is the pattern. And I'm showing you the historical reference of a time frame that occurred that led into a war. And it is part of this time frame before that tells me that we're going to have major shifts in society. Because I saw a pattern before. I've literally picked up on this meditative time frame over 2 years ago, and I've been sitting on this because it's a weird energy to feel and it's a weird thing to think about. Many people know that World War II started because, Germany invaded Poland. Hitler started to invade. However, what a lot of people don't realize is that Hitler actually doubled the size of Germany before actually ever shooting an entire firearm before doing anything. And the first phase of World War II was known as the phony war because nothing was shot. Everything was based off of bullying, agreements that were signed, treaties in these agreements, but a big bullying tactic, but also lies. Now, I'm not a historian in the greatest regard when it comes to World War II. I know snippets. I'm going to be honest, Wikipedia helps. But what I can do is I can look at transits and look at the similar pattern. And at the start of World War II, Pluto was in Leo. It was the start of Pluto in Leo. And opposite of Pluto in Leo, we had a Mars retrograde in Aquarius and Capricorn. The areas of the sky that are being highlighted now that don't necessarily seem like they're very, very important, that are going to lead to bigger things later on. So what I'm going to explain next is very much a history lesson. And I have summarized all of this based off of some of the things that I've studied. Again, I am not a historian. I am an astrologer, and I look for patterns. We're going to talk about this. Example number 1, July 22nd of 1938. This was when Mars, Pluto, and the Sun had a triple conjunction in Cancer. Why is this date important? Because between July 22nd and July 24th of 1938, Germany started issuing the requirements that Jewish families needed to start registering their existence. Nothing was shot, at least not in this area. Other areas of the world, they had their own drama. But in this area, that order installed fear. The decision of said order and the expression of said order created fear. But nothing was being acted upon yet. Nothing was completely known yet. The roundups were not occurring. The order to be known and to register was a small little moment that people had no idea the long-term implications of. I'm telling you now that this week that we are in has the implications of a small moment that is going to impact society, because so many of the areas of the sky from then are now being activated now, just in reverse. So I'm going to keep going with this. The next transit that occurred whenever it came to Mars and Pluto was May 23rd. Now, when it comes to the historic things that I was able to look for, I'm going to be honest, there was not a whole lot of energy tied to this time frame. So whatever was getting ordered, whatever was finalizing in this moment, whatever treaties, whatever negotiations, they were not hugely historically referenced, but we still had a Mars-Pluto opposition. And this first Mars-Pluto opposition, both Mars and Pluto were direct, just like the one that we'll have later this year, specifically the one in November. Okay? Okay. The second Mars-Pluto opposition during the retrograde, July 20th of 1939. Pluto was in Leo, Mars in Aquarius. 0 degrees. The same areas of the sky that are being highlighted now. The North Node was in a Mars-ruled sign, just like now. The South Node was in a Venus-ruled sign, just like now. The third and final Mars-Pluto opposition occurred September 29th of 1939. Now, I'm going to tie some things together. Whenever it comes to these timeframes in 1939, specifically between July and September, September was the start of the invasion. But what started to come through, and I feel like what actually happened in May of 1939, so this is the dusty synopsis of this part, not necessarily what's in the history books. But what did happen between July and September is that The Nazi forces, the German forces, I'll just say for German, say it this way, the German forces started to stage fake attacks and reporting them in their newspaper and on the radio as that they were being attacked by the smaller countries, that they were being attacked specifically by Poland. They lied. People in power lied. Don't have that problem anymore, do we? No? Okay. Moving on. I have a feeling that the May timeframe was the plans being discussed. And that's why we don't have a huge historical reference. The strategy involved as to where we are going to have said plans unfold. And then once we got to September of 1939, the phony war timeframe that I'm talking about now was, again, the Germans invaded a country based off of fake attacks that they staged. Now, again, I am not forecasting a war. What I'm going to do next is kind of tie the differences and the similarities to where we are now. Pluto is now in Aquarius and not Leo. What happened during that time frame historically while Pluto was in Leo is that people, Mars and Aquarius, took actions based off of fear of people in power. Pluto in Leo. There was a fear about power and who was going to be right. And there was a big fear as to what side of the coin people should be on. Now, Pluto is in Aquarius. We as people, as individuals, as a society, we don't tend to trust people in power anymore. We don't. And what I can see actually occurring would now be the reverse. And that is because the people in power are not feared in the way that they used to. Before, we were trying to reestablish forms of power. World War II happened very, very shortly after World War I. And in between the two wars, we had a huge financial crisis. We had the things that happened in 1929 and the failures, and that led into the Great Depression of the 1930s. That Great Depression was very much not necessarily triggered by the people in power because there was no regulation. Now there are lots of regulations. And in fact, there are more to come. And I feel like as more regulations start to unfold in regards to how they impact people, that is going to lead to people no longer wanting to be oppressed. And I do feel like what can happen in the upcoming Mars retrograde can be more along the lines of fighting people that are abusing power, not believing people in power, and considering this Mars retrograde that's going to occur in between these two eclipse seasons that we're going to go into, these two Aries ruled eclipses that I'm talking about, the early parts of 2024, the later, and then going into 2025. I feel like there will be acts and actions by people in power to try to enforce more law and regulation in one way, shape, or form on people, and people will reject it. And we will have a presidential election that's going to happen in the middle of this. And that's what's interesting. What occurred before was there was a streamlining of people going from monarchies, and I'm talking about the 1930s, to dictatorships. The positions of power shifted. Mussolini was a dictator that took over Italy. Hitler was a dictator that formed a power over people. but he used fear to innate that power. And by the end of the whole war timeline, we had new people and new powers in position. And we also had countries become superpowers. It was also during Pluto and Leo that the United States became a superpower. That time frame is now going into its Pluto opposition. And superpowers and people that have far too much power over the masses are going to be shaken up. And that's what I fear is going to happen. There's a lot of great things that happen through social media. I'm taking advantage of it right now. We all have some area of social media that we listen to and then we talk to and then we think about and we put more emphasis on. And there are many of us that we would prefer to listen to other creators on things like TikTok and YouTube and Facebook than watching regular television. And that is starting to impact companies that have been in positions of power. I do also feel like if there was ever going to be a strong race where somebody could run as an independent to become president of the United States, they could do it now through social media. And they could gain a whole different level of following that no candidate has ever been able to obtain before. But if that person was not identified and recognized in this new position of power, and the good old boy system tried to maintain their way of doing things, that there would be a whole new way of shaking up the system. What I feel like is going to come later this year on a big picture scale, now not just in our individual lives, but on a big picture scale, is that people that are trying to abuse their power are going to piss off the little people, probably for one of the last times. And if it comes down to trying to force individuals to do something that they don't want to do, there's a reason so many people have been really feeling like they need to live off grid, that they need to separate from elements of society. And I feel like that can also be a big portion as to what starts to unfold as we go into this next 2 years, the rest of 2024 and going into 2025. We are in a timeline of transitions, huge transitions. And there will be the potential of a new kind of war. Do I think that's going to happen this year? No. Do I think that we're laying the groundwork for something? Yes. We're already seeing how quickly social media can shake people in positions of power. And for the first time in a very, very long time, people in positions of power, companies are very, very afraid of what power people can hold. We've all seen elements of it. Somebody has a bad experience, they feel like their, sibling or their loved one was just, taken care of in a negative way at a restaurant, just a restaurant. They can post something on social media, and if it hits the nerve of tons of people, it can go viral overnight. And that viral energy of people being in technology and using technology so quickly can make or break a business. That's scary because that's never been heard of before. The thing about Pluto in Aquarius is that people understand how much power that they have. And the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, we had huge revolutions. Huge revolutions. The American Revolution that happened in the late 1700s, whenever Pluto was in Aquarius, and the French Revolution. people understand at this moment their voice and their words are far more powerful than they've ever been. And I do truly feel like we will see elements of people that are being held in some position of power, being held to some inauthentic way of do as I say and not as I do. They want the double standard because it benefits them. Being shaken up as we progress. There are energies unfolding right now that have the ability to revolutionize our society in good ways and bad ways. And the smallest little inklings of said energy is starting to unfold as we speak. So few people have the ability to recognize when they are going through a major change and transformation in time, because we're just horses with blinders looking at what's ahead of us and not always paying attention to the bigger spectrum. It's very easy to miss. Not everybody watches the news. Not everybody is tuned in, unless it's social media. The stronger our forms of social media gets, the more impactful it's going to be on people in positions of power. And what's going to happen later on is that these people in positions of power are going to try to control that tool. They're going to want to control that energy because they're not going to want to lose their positions of power. They like their double standard. They do. That's not an easy thing for them to understand. And if you're not recognizing what's going on around you, then this is not an easy timeline to live in. I'm saying we're on the brink of something really, really big. And not everybody can put those things together quite yet. But we will be able to in the future. This is a very different kind of video. I don't do them very often, but when I do them, I try to put a lot of things together. And I'm telling you the energies that are starting to unfold throughout the rest of February, going into March, going into eclipse season. They will launch a lot of new things in both pivotal and chaotic ways. There's a reason disruptions are coming this week, astrologically speaking, this week. And they're going to impact things later on. And people that feel like they can use their power over another person in a negative way is going to have a huge freaking reality check as we continue through this year. I don't want to stop anybody from using social media in any way. I love the forms of growth and change that we're going into. And I see the benefits that it can be for so many people. But I also see that it's installing a lot of fear. And over these next few years, the more people start to fear that their belief system is being challenged, that their entitlement is not going to maintain the energy that they want, that it is being challenged, that it has the risk of falling away because they have not lived with this energy and they are not living to something that is authentic to everyone. That's going to be something that is huge over these next few years. There's a reason we feel the need to call people out who are abusing their power, who are not doing the right things. That's going to continue. But it's going to happen in a whole new level over the course of these next 2 years. And I'm telling you now, as we go through these next few weeks, pay attention to every little detail, the snippet little news article, something coming out from on Twitter from like the SEC, or some new law that's being passed in your local government or in your state, some new policy that's coming through in your workplace. Pay attention to these things. They're going to be something that's bigger later. I'm saying this now, and I'm interblending the personal effects as well as the big picture effects by saying it that way. We are meant to make big transitional changes. These next 2 years have a huge dynamic to them. And I have felt that for a very long time, but I've also felt like people were not ready to hear me say that. Not to the extent that I'm saying it now. If we catch people in positions of power, again, trying to hold people to some double standard, we're more likely to call them out. And here pretty soon, we're going to call out a right amount of the wrong people to where they're going to want to enforce certain rules and laws, and they're not going to care what it takes to pass them. Remember the start of World War II? The very first phase of it was called the Phony War, and they staged attacks. Can that happen again in the real world with the actual wars that are going on in the Middle East and in the Russian area? Yes, of course. But I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about people in positions of power trying to create upheaval in areas where they do not have power, so that way they can gain control of that area where they don't have power. They're trying to seize it in sneaky ways. Some of us know that already, and we're awake to that. And I'm not a huge conspiracy theory person. I'm really not. I am an astrologer, and I'm looking at the patterns. And it's very hard to miss that in some ways we are repeating certain parts of history that we have tried to wipe out. If you try to forget history, then you open yourself up to repeating those situations all over again. They're going to try to repeat history in a new way, in a new form. And it's more than likely going to backfire at first. And then they're going to come up with another way to try to control it. And we need to be prepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly in a personal sense and in the big picture sense moving forward. Okay. This was long. There's a lot of things that are going on. I put a lot of energies into one very, very long video, but that's why it's called a meditative rant video. And I know not everybody is going to listen to this, and that is okay. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.